What if a battle was fought so secretly that even history was ordered to forget it? In the silence between official records and fading memory lies a story Britain never meant to tell, a conflict waged, not on open fields, but in the shadows of maps, beneath ink and secrecy. It began in the final months of a war meant to decide the fate of Europe, when the air smelled of rain, coal, and coded messages. Somewhere along a coast where fog met radio static, an operation unfolded that no one would later claim. Orders were issued in whispers, documents stamped top secret, then quietly destroyed. The soldiers who marched there carried no flags. Their uniforms bore no insignia. To the world, this battle never happened, and yet, its outcome shaped everything that came after. In a time when victory was measured by headlines and parades, this one was measured by silence. It was a contest of deception, forged from the art of misinformation. Maps deliberately redrawn, reports falsified, communications intercepted, and Britain. As strategists understood that sometimes the surest way to win a war was to convince the enemy and even your own people that it never took place. The plan was codenamed so simply that it escaped attention, hidden in plain sight among dozens of minor operations. It began as a diversion, an illusion meant to mislead enemy intelligence. But like all powerful ideas, it grew beyond its design. A small fleet of disguised vessels, a handful of trained men, and one false message sent across enemy lines. The goal was misdirection, to make the opposition look one way while the real offensive moved another. Yet, in the mist and confusion of that winter morning, the illusion became reality. The enemy, reacting faster than anticipated, countered the phantom threat with very real force. And so, a battle that was never meant to happen, happened. What followed was chaos without witness. Radios hammered, coordinates lost, and two invisible forces clashed on the same strip of forgotten coast. There were no reporters, no medals, only a ledger entry marked material loss undisclosed. When dawn rose, the survivors returned to find their own nation denying their existence. Their mission had succeeded, the real offensive elsewhere had gone untouched, but at the cost of their own acknowledgement. In London, the War Office sealed the reports and ordered absolute silence. For the historians who came later, there was nothing to find them, the absence of information, the faint smell of burned paper, and a few cryptic telegrams preserved by chance. Yet beneath those fragments, a pattern emerges. Britain's mastery of information warfare, its genius for disguise, and its willingness to sacrifice truth for strategy. This forgotten battle became the prototype for modern intelligence, the blueprint for every covert operation that followed. It wasn't about terrain or artillery, but about control of perception. It taught the world that the most decisive victories happen off the record. Decades later, a researcher in a dim archive stumbled upon a misfiled notebook, a weather log from a coastal station that recorded unexplained detonations at 3:42 hours. That single entry reopened a question no one dared to ask. What really happened that night? Slowly, pieces surfaced: a ship's manifest with missing names, a decoded cipher referencing diversionary maneuvers, and an aging photograph showing men whose regiments officially never existed. The evidence was too scattered to form a full picture. Yet together, it outlined the ghost of an event too deliberate to be a coincidence. The forgotten battle, it seemed, had been real all along. It wasn't erased by accident, it was erased by design. Those who knew believed secrecy was the greater weapon. After all, the fewer who understood what Britain had done, the safer its methods would remain. This silence wasn't born of Shemitwa's strategy. Imagine walking through an abandoned bunker carved into chalk cliffs, dust motes swirling like static in your torchlight. You pause before a rusted plaque bearing only numbers. The sound of the wind through broken vents becomes the echo of lost transmissions. You can almost hear the click of Morse keys, the faint shuffle of boots on wet concrete, the hum of generators powering machines that spoke in codes no one now can read. History often celebrates noise, the roar of cannons, the cheers of crowds, but this story belongs to the quiet, to the men who fought in frequencies and forgery. Their war left no ruins, only data, and that is why it remains so dangerous. Because to study it is to realize that truth itself can be weaponized. In later decades, When nations built their intelligence agencies and black budget departments, many of the architects had once served in this erased campaign. They carried forward its lessons: how to build an illusion that costs less than an army, how to manipulate signals to move divisions without firing a shot, how to let your enemy waste his strength chasing ghosts. The Forgotten Battle was not merely a footnote. It was the foundation of the invisible wars that define our modern world. Every cyber attack, every covert influence operation, every misinformation campaign traces its lineage back to that night when Britain learned to fight without being seen. And yet, as one elder historian's voice softens, there is no triumph in this, and only awe and a hint of unease. They won, he says, but they won a victory they could never claim. The more you uncover, the stranger the evidence becomes. A map with coordinates that lead to empty sea, a requisition order for supplies to a non-existent unit, and a diary entry from a coastal resident who wrote of hearing the sky flicker. Each clue contradicts the next, as if history itself refuses coherence. That is the hallmark of a story: deliberately fractured truth, scattered so finely it can never be pieced together again. So why erase it? Some argue it was to protect intelligence methods, others to avoid diplomatic scandal. But the most haunting theory is simpler: that the battle revealed something about warfare itself, something too unsettling for posterity. That when nations learn to manipulate perception, they blur the boundary between defense and deceit. We're now in London, under the quiet grandeur of archival vaults, watching a historian compare handwriting samples. He aligns dates and discovers that an entire month of official records was rewritten retroactively. The same signatures appear on conflicting orders. This discovery sends a tremor through the narrative of the war itself. What if this forgotten engagement altered a major outcome without anyone realizing? The silence, then, was not mere omission, it was containment. Britain's greatest strength had always been its capacity for secrecy. An empire built as much on information as on industry. And in that mastery of concealment lies the paradox that the truth of power is often its invisibility. You feel the weight of centuries pressing against the walls of bureaucracy, of truth buried not by lies, but by paperwork. Every stamped document, every redacted line, every missing file is a monument to the battle's success. Because if the goal was to vanish, it achieved perfection. The camera now glides over the historian's face as he opens a folder, newly declassified after Inside lies a single sheet of paper, brittle and yellowed. Across it, in fading typewriter ink, are 4 words: action completed, no further record. He exhales. The meaning clear: this was the official burial of the battle. Yet in that deliberate erasure lies the story's haunting beauty. For history, like memory, is defined as much by what is forgotten as by what endures. Sometimes, the silence tells the loudest tale. We think history is written in ink, but perhaps it is written in disappearance. So Tamif, a battle could be won by secrecy alone. What else in history might we have already forgotten? Thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadows of history. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more hidden truths. We'll see you in the next one.